Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another 30 minutes of Q&A. Let me stick the phone number up here for you guys so that you guys can call in, get your questions answered about anything to do with business, personal finance, achieving financial independence. So if you guys have your questions, make sure you call in. And now, intro sequence. So today we're going to be talking about the inventor of the iconic, delicious Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. His name is HB Reese. And by the way, just so you guys know what's going on here, I'm going to be starting off these. Uh, Again, it's 30 minutes maximum, so make sure you carve out some time on Fridays at 2:30 Eastern Time. So stick that in your calendar. And if you guys have any questions, again, phone number to call here is 941-259-4779. Get your questions answered. And I'm taking your questions live on the air, raw, uncut, and unfiltered here. So I'm going to be starting off with a monologue. So at least we have something to talk about here while we wait for the callers to trickle in. And so today, like I said, I'm going to be talking about a guy by the name of HB Reese. Now he was working for Milton Hershey. The guy was born 1879, and he started working for Milton Hershey in 19, I believe it was 1917. Let me get that specific number for you here. Yep. So in 1917, Reese was hired by Milton Hershey of, Hershey's Candy Company to work on his dairy farm as a dairy manager in this, I don't know what you would want to call it. It's kind of like I talk a lot about automation. And so in business, a lot of times you want to be able to automate things, and you also want to hire people, in other words, human resources, to be able to, be able to operate your business efficiently and be able to scale when you get to that point. So Milton Hershey, obviously, while he was scaling, he looked into various automation. Now, remember, this was back in the early 1900s, and Henry Ford had really pioneered the assembly line and robotics and those sorts of things. So Milton Hershey had created this round barn, is what it was called. And on this round barn, it was like a automatic milking machine for these, for cows to be able to create this milk chocolate. So HB Reese had been working for Milton Hershey on this farm from about 19, I think he was hired in 1917, and by 1919, Hershey had shut down the round barn because it was far too much money to operate this thing. It just wasn't cost effective, so they had to shut that down. So that left Reese without a job. So now, meanwhile, keep in mind, you don't know this yet. I'm about to tell you. He had, I believe, 5 kids with one on the way. So, I mean, you can imagine what that must be like, when you're experiencing a loss of job, and people have experienced that um, recently. Everything that happened in 2020. Um, so you can imagine what he was going through at that point, and he eventually decided to start. And this is a temptation that many people have when they're out of a job or they get laid off or things like that. They have this temptation to, if they have that itch, the entrepreneurial itch, to start that business, while you're out of a job. And you guys know, if you guys are familiar with any of my material, you guys know that I highly recommend getting yourself financially set first before you go off and do things like, start a business. Obviously, you can start a business on the side if you have and I highly advocate for you guys to do that. If you're looking to start a business, do it while you're working full time, and then on the side, as what they call, a side hustle, start your business on the side. So HB Reese had started this candy company in 1919 while he was unemployed, and he really gave it a good shot. He really wanted this to be successful. He was selling, basically, it was milk chocolate, almonds, raisins, that sort of thing, to local stores. And he did okay. I'm sure he learned quite a bit during that period of time. And so he basically, by around 1920, 1921, he was out of business. He tried to pivot. He tried raising money, and none of it really none of it really got much traction. And and at this point, he had about 10. I'm sorry, it was actually 10 children with with another baby on the way. So, imagine this guy. He just got fired from his job. He spent about a year or two, really giving a good effort trying to run this business. He's got 10 kids, one on the way, and his business, I don't know if you would want to, I wouldn't label it as a failure. I would label it more as a temporary setback. And we've all experienced these sorts of things, temporary setbacks when you're trying to achieve something and it's just not really working out, and you have to try different things, and ultimately you may, I don't want to use the word fail, but you may end up having to kind of go back to the drawing board at some point, which is what happened to HB Reese. So he ended up he ended up getting a job after that business went out at a paper mill. And then he also got a second job as a butcher, and then a third job canning vegetables. Now, I've been in this scenario before as well, where you know, you come off the heels of a, so quote unquote failure. I had started my e-commerce business in 2000, and by 2010, we were, for all intents and purposes, out of business by that point. So we had a good run, but it just, with the economy of the global financial crisis of 2008, it we just couldn't pursue that business anymore, and so we had to shut the doors, and I had to start over from scratch. So I can definitely relate to Mr. Reese and how he had to overcome, this, and a lot of that holds us back. I feel like failure holds people back from really truly achieving their dreams. I mean, imagine if, I'll tell you the rest of the story, but imagine if he had given up at that point and he said, you know what, to heck with this, I'm done. I'm completely done. I'm just gonna work my job as a butcher and canning vegetables and working in the paper mill during the day. Imagine if he had just given up there, and he didn't bring us these iconic, candies. Could you imagine if we had to live in a world without Reese's peanut butter cups because he had just given up and decided, that's enough. I'm done. I've failed and I'm not gonna go any further. So before we go any further, make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, and also make sure that you guys take note of this number. Now I know, people may be a little bit apprehensive, let's say, to call in. You may be a little bit nervous. Oh my gosh, I'm live on the internet and so forth. I mean, first of all, there's probably not very many. Let's see what the streams are. Oh, we got 3 people. So I mean, that's great. Hey guys, how's everything going? Hopefully you guys are getting some value out of this. But anybody that wants to, maybe one of you guys, while you guys are here, I mean, come on, somebody call in, get your questions answered. I'm sure there's something on your mind that you have a question about, either business, personal finance, how to achieve financial independence. I mean, here's your chance, guys. I don't know of anybody else out there that's doing this. So again, the phone number to call here is 941-259-4779. So give me a call in here and get your questions answered. So let me pull down. Hang on, guys. Let me, cause since we all have a 8-second attention span, I've been playing around with this multicam thing. Also, by the way, I don't know if you guys noticed if you guys were on last week, you guys noticed I had a really terrible webcam. I ended up springing for brand new webcams so you guys get a little higher quality while you're watching, keep you a little more entertained and engaged. So again, number to call here is 941-259-4779. So go ahead and give me a call there. In the meantime, we're going to get back to, if you guys are just, if anybody's just joining now, I've been talking about the incredible story of a man named HB Reese, the inventor of the Reese's peanut butter cup delicious candy. So HB Reese was a employee of Milton Hershey. Just for those of you who are just joining in, he ended up getting fired, and he decided to start his own chocolate company since he had the experience from working. And this is a big thing that I teach a lot of times too, is being able to monetize your existing skill set, whether it's work related skills or hobby skills. And that's exactly what HB Reese attempted to do before he went out of business with his first company, was to basically take the skills that he learned working for Hershey and to be able to create candies. And guess what? This is a tried and true business. I mean, they've been making commercial candies have been produced since the mid to late 1800s, and they really rose in popularity in the early 1900s. So here's Reese in 1919 trying to start a candy company in a proven industry. Now I'm sure there's quite a few things that he learned during his first iteration, and one of the things that I teach often, all the time, is again, make sure you have a good financial footing before you go off and start a new business. So, here's Reese. He just lost his job. He decides, well, now's a good time to start a business. That's really not the best time. But I'm sure he learned quite a bit from going through that experience, that by the time he ended up getting back on his feet, he was working for, again, for those of you just joining, he took a job at a paper mill once his business went out, and he got another job as a butcher, and I had a third job. The guy had 3 jobs because he had 11 kids at this point. So you can imagine what this guy was going through. Eventually, by 1921, he ended up getting another job at Hershey in the shipping department. So he's doing pretty good. He's probably making pretty decent money. I don't know specifically what he's making. He's probably doing pretty good. And on the side, here we go, side hustle. This is what I always teach you guys to do. On the side, from his basement, he didn't have any, fancy equipment or anything. He's making chocolates in his basement. He was making hard candy. He was making chocolate covered nuts, chocolate covered raisins, and he's experimenting with different things. And he created the Lizzie bar, named after his daughter, and the Johnny bar, named after one of his sons. And he was doing pretty good. He was making pretty decent money. Now, in terms of the delicious Reese's peanut butter cup, which is probably what you guys all want to hear about, how that was created. Any business and any product creation always has the real story, and then the folklore story. So I mean, if you look it up online, you'll see all different explanations of it. One explanation, according to Wikipedia here, is that one of his customers had let's see here. Automated. Here we go. So he had okay. confectioner who made a candy. So one of his competitors was basically selling peanut butter covered with chocolate, which we all know what that is now. Um, but there was a problem with that manufacturer, and so one of his customers, one of Reese's customers, had basically mentioned this to him and said, "Hey, listen, we got these, chocolate chocolate covered peanut butter candies, and they're having all sorts of issues with making them. It's a good, basically a good product." And so he decided to start making it. Product gained a lot of popularity, and it was his one of his number one candies. Now, remember the time frame we're talking about here. This is, we're getting close to like the late 1920s. So now the roaring 20s are over, and we're getting pretty close to the Depression. So when the Great Depression hit, HB Reese, I mean, chocolate was a luxury, right? So HB Reese had decided basically, all right, let's take our most popular candy, the Reese's peanut butter cup. Let me see if I could stick up a little bit of a picture here for you guys to see. Do I have this queued up? No, sorry guys, never added it in. I can probably add it in quick now. So in the meantime, while I'm adding this in, I want you guys to know that you should be calling 941. Yep, my bad. I should have done the swoosh first. 941-259-4779 so you can get your questions answered. Now, just so you guys know, I'm not really monitoring the chat, so let me see if yep, nobody's chatting anyway. Oh, and we lost a few people. Oh, we only got one person. All right. Well, that's fine. I'll keep it going for you guys joining from the future, watching on the playback. And by the way, like I said, I want to keep these things down to 30 minutes maximum. So we're about 13 minutes away. So if you want to get that call in, go ahead and get that call in right now. So let's see here. So we got, where did I leave you guys off? Okay, HB Reese. So now this is the Depression time. So he decided, all right, I'm going to only make the most popular, best-selling candy possible. And so that was when he decided to, let's stop selling the Lizzie bar, let's stop selling the Johnny bar, let's stop selling everything, and let's just focus solely on the peanut butter cup. And so that turned out to be a genius move because he ended up, the guy was so successful that he, by, let's see what Wikipedia says here. Let's see. So by 19, he died in 1956. So by 1935, he was able to pay off the mortgages on his house, which he had built. Once he started achieving some levels of success, he built this huge house. I mean, the guy had a huge family. He ended up having 16 kids total. 13 of which, I'm sorry, 3 of which never made it to adulthood. This was back in the early 1900s. They didn't have the same level of health care that we have nowadays. So ultimately, he had 13 children living with him, and plus his wife. And from what I understand, he had an extended family that had lived with him as well. So he had a number of people that he had to support here. So he had to, he ended up building a very nice. I haven't seen pictures of it, but I assume a very nice house. But by 1935, he had paid off the mortgage on the house, and he paid off the mortgage on his factory. So let me tell you a little bit about the genius of, I kind of glossed over some stuff. So let me just tell you some of the genius of HB Reese. So first of all, he never gave up. He never accepted failure as failure, and that's something we can learn a lesson from. Is that if you don't give up, it's really not failure. You can just keep going and going until you achieve success. I mean, he achieved success when he was like in his mid 40s, and he was jobless, and by the time he was 40, he had to start completely over from scratch. And I can relate to that because I was 30 when I had to start over from scratch. He didn't make any excuses. He didn't say, "Oh, well, I have, 13 kids or 11 kids or whatever. I can't do this. I don't have the time or whatever." He never made excuses, as far as I'm aware. He succeeded. Eventually, he succeeded because he started his business as a side hustle, as opposed to just doing it, full time, just jumping into it full time. When he did it full time, he just jumped right into it when he got fired from Hershey's. He didn't achieve the level of success that I'm sure he hoped for. He ended up going out of business with that. So that's a lesson that we can learn from that, is that if you want to start a business, great, great, fantastic, but make sure you have the proper footing first, and that you're in a position where you won't have any sort of surprises. Where I mean, running a business is hard. I can tell you, as a serial entrepreneur, they don't all pan out. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing is guaranteed to be a success either. But he just kept trying. He never gave up. He never made excuses. And then he started a side hustle, which then was able to surpass the income that he was making at his full-time job. And he was able to transition into that, and he made a fortune. I mean, a multi-generational fortune is what this guy created. Another thing that's important to keep in mind is that he started a tried and true business. This is something I always tell you guys to do, is always start with a tried and true business. Don't try to create some brand new app that doesn't exist yet, or some crazy invention or what have you. I mean, I don't want to discourage you from that, but if you want to increase your odds, you have to stick with something tried and true. He scaled his business through automation and obviously human resources. I mean, you need employees, whether it's W-2 employees, contractors. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts, but you need people, a team working with you in order to be able to succeed. You can't just start a business as a solopreneur and expect to be able to do everything yourself. You're going to end up burning out very quickly. So he scaled his business through automation. Now, automation in the chocolate creation industry would be something like, obviously, robotic machines and stuff that would then, take out these. I'm sure that there's some sort of machine that somehow makes these cups. I kind of ruined it. If you guys see it, kind of an animal here ripping this thing open. Let me get you a fresh one. This is beautiful. I mean, look at that. It's probably made by a machine. I'm sure he was making it with machines back then, robotics and machinery. Like I said, in the early 1900s, Henry Ford had really pioneered a lot of that stuff, and people learned from Ford, and they were able to, apply that to their businesses. So it's very important to have automation wherever you can have it. Now, nowadays, a lot of people may be starting like an online business. So you have automation through so much stuff. You have like autoresponders for emails, and you have all types of things. Like my web hosting business relies very heavily on automation. So a new customer calls in, creates an account, or orders online. That web hosting environment gets automatically created for them. I don't have to sit in there and create the web hosting environment. It's all automated. So if you're looking to start a business, if you're looking to scale a business, automation is going to be your best friend, and human resources for any of the gaps where you can't fill with automation. So I'm going to show you guys. We haven't gotten any calls today, and that's okay, because those of you watching in the future, you'll see this number, and you'll see what this is all about. I mean, this is a pretty new thing. You guys watching from the future will just be like, oh, okay, I'll call 941-259-4779 next week, and I'll get my questions about business, personal finance, and financial independence answered live in the air. And again, don't worry about calling in if you guys are nervous and you're like, oh my God, the whole internet. It's not the whole internet. I don't have the whole internet as an audience. The other thing too is I believe there's no such thing as a stupid question. The only thing that's stupid is not asking questions. So keep that in mind when you call in. And before we hang up here, I just kind of want to do a couple quick things here. I want to show you guys what I've been working on in terms of kind of why I transitioned away temporarily from doing these scripted videos, and why I'm doing this live show, which if this live show pans out, I'll do the live show in addition to scripted videos in the future. But what I've been working on here, let me see if I can operate this screen share properly. Let's see. Oh, there we go. All right. So, oh, wrong thing. Oops. Hopefully nobody sees anything. All right. Anyway, this is what I've been working on here. I have e-commerce millions, which is my. Now I have a couple courses here. This web hosting course is not anywhere near. It hasn't even been started yet, to be honest with you. This e-commerce course has been highly requested. So I've decided, you know what, I need to really. Oh, here we go. We got a call coming in. Hey, this is Rob. You're live on the line with ELI 5. How you doing
Hey
today?
there, it's Jimmy.
Hey, Jimmy. How's it going today?
Not bad, pretty good. I've got a
Cool.
couple questions.
Okay.
Did you want some sort of structure to it, or just throw anything at you?
Whatever questions you have, I'm here to answer.
Oh, cool. So I know when you start your own business, whether it's a big business, I guess more in a small business,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes your personal finances and your expenses get kind of intertwined. Do you have any guidelines? Oh, sorry.
So when you're saying that your personal finances and your business finances getting intertwined,
Mm-hmm.
are you saying that, in other words, because it's a new business, you're just trying to get that working capital up, and you don't have sales and revenue that's organically providing you with working capital? Is that your question?
Oh, that's a good point too. But for this question, I was
Mm-hmm.
more just from a tax write-off standpoint, justifying certain things. Like if I buy a Tesla and I use it to drive to the office and meet with clients,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I know you're not an accountant, but
Yes,
I do know
correct,
that it's
exactly. I'm not
but
a
I do know
CPA. I'm
you're.
not an accountant. But in terms of my personal experience with, I think what
Mhm.
your question is, you need to really get some sort of bookkeeping software. You really need to keep a close eye on your books and really track everything, because guess what? When it comes time to when April, rolls around, or the first quarter of the year rolls around, you're going to be scrambling trying to put together all sorts of things for to hand over to your accountant or your CPA. And so by keeping books all along the year, you're really saving yourself a big headache, when it comes time to filing your taxes. So definitely get some sort of there's a free program I used to use called Wave Apps, WAVE apps. I
Okay.
wasn't too happy with the way that it functioned in terms of pulling the, the transactions from your bank into your bookkeeping software. I kept disconnecting, and so I ended up switching to
Oh,
QuickBooks. And I've been very happy with QuickBooks. They have fantastic support. It's phenomenal. So definitely
awesome.
keep an eye on your books. Start with a free program if you have to, but eventually, once you start making money, you're going to probably want to transition over to something a little more solid.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
So we got
Yeah.
about 2 more minutes left here, Jimmy. So if you have maybe another one more question, maybe.
Sure. Let's see. It's another thing. It's a little specific. I don't know if it's too specific for you, but I heard if you work
Yeah.
from home, like if you make calls and you call clients, you could have a certain 1/3 of one of your bedrooms or 1/3 of your rent or monthly living payments as a tax write-off, something like that if you work from home.
Yes, and this year there's probably quite a number of people who are going to be taking advantage of that. A few things to keep in mind. Number one is the IRS does audit those returns a lot more often than not. Although the
Whoa.
IRS enforcement, from what I understand, there's not much of a budget, so they're only really auditing a very small fraction of returns. So it is sort of a red flag in a way. Obviously, you don't want to be committing tax fraud. So if you do get audited, it's just a headache, and it's not like you're gonna get into any sort of trouble. But it does kind of raise a little bit of a red flag. I don't personally take that deduction, because if you own the home, then part of your capital gains, if you end up selling the house, and you would be subject to capital gains even though you've lived in it for 2 out of the last 5 years.